Hey everyone, in my last video I shared the technique that I use for skirting my cabins, and since then the questions have been rolling in. So I told everyone that I would collect the questions for a week or two and then I'd answer them all in a Q&A format. I've also had a lot of folks reaching out that are interested in building a cabin, and they have little to no carpentry experience, so they asked me if I would elaborate a bit further on the process of building on piers. So I try to cater to my subscribers the best that I can. So for this video, I will do both. I will answer all the questions that came in about the skirting technique, and then I will share what I have learned about building on piers. Share a bit of insight about things that you must do and some other things that you should avoid. In other words, you can learn from my mistakes. All right, folks? So I got a log seal and joist I want to drag out of here, and then I'll get up in the wood shop and get rolling on the video. Throughout my entire life, every structure that I have built for my own personal use has been built on piers, with a few exceptions where I built on blocks directly upon the surface of the ground. I like piers for a number of reasons. First off, because they provide me with a permanent foundation at a fraction of the cost of other methods. I also like it because I can do the entire process myself and accomplish the task and have many times with nothing more than simple hand tools. The process may appear to be self-explanatory, but like with every project, there's always tricks to the trade. So here's a few things to consider before you start. When building on blocks or piers, there's a few factors that will determine the performance and longevity of your project. Climate is the most obvious, as someone in the south won't have the same concerns as a builder in the north where frost is an issue. Frost can wreak havoc on a structure if certain precautions aren't taken. Soil composition also plays a major role here. If you're in a cold climate and plan to build on blocks upon the surface of the ground, here's a few things to consider before you start. When building on blocks, it's customary to set your perimeter joist on the center of the block to distribute the weight evenly. I've found this isn't always the best approach. If you plan to skirt the building, you will have to fit the skirting around the blocks. Also, as frost heaves upward, it will take the path of least resistance, and over time, it will throw your blocks out of level and cause upsets in your framework. Heaving problems are a common occurrence with soils that are dark and stony, but less in sandy soils where there are no stones within the frost line. At my cabin, even though temps often drop below zero, I built my workshop on surface blocks and have had no issues whatsoever in the 13 or so years that it's been there. There's two reasons for my success. First and foremost is because the ground beneath my structure is all sand. I can dig all day and rarely find a stone big enough to throw. Sandy soil is less volatile than stony ground. The second reason why my blocks stay where they belong is because of the extra steps I take in my framework.
I started with a 16-inch by 16-inch patio block, which is about 2.5 inches thick. And I put that in because it's easy to move around and level as I square up the whole floor system. Then when I have all of those in place, I just added a couple of these 4-inch blocks to give it a little bit of elevation. Now here I used some of my scrap pressure treated, and I laid it in and I nailed it through here and put this on. That way the pressure of the building is pressing down on the whole flat surface of the pad beneath it. If I didn't do this and I just had the perimeter joist pressing down on the pad, over time as the frost would push the pad up, the blocks would tip. I didn't put this on the center of the pad because I don't want the pad sticking beyond the rim joist. When I skirt this all the way to the ground, I want to seal it up to keep the cold air from going beneath the cabin.
If I didn't have such a nice sandy base to work with, I would have certainly sunk concrete piers below the frost line. And here at this project, we had just the opposite conditions to work with. Here the ground is dark soft soil with clay beneath it. It's not well drained and full of stones. Stones within the frost line will heave and never settle back to where they started from. I don't want those upsets near my piers, so I remove them and replace the soil with crushed gravel. After the building was up, I banked crushed gravel against the skirting so that rain from the roof doesn't collect against the building and always drains away. Okay, since I posted that video, I've had a lot of questions come in. I've also had a lot of repeat questions, and that's why I told everyone that I would answer them in my next video. So let's get to it. Spreading a tarp over the ground in your crawl space will certainly cut down on any moisture that you have beneath your structure. That is true. But I also said that everyone's situation is different, and that we live off the grid, and we like to button up our crawl space tight so that we trap the ambient temperature of the ground beneath the cabin because we store food and beverages in that crawl space. If I blanket over the ground, that will trap the ambient temperature of the ground beneath the tarp. Putting a tarp over the ground will interfere with the temperature of the ground that I'm trying to utilize. Now I showed you where I like to use cement board for my skirting, so people were asking if I put a sealer on the cement board before I bury it in the ground. Well, I never have, and I've never had any issues, but then I got thinking that the cement board that I use was used a long time ago. It was stuff that was purchased a long time ago. When I bought cement board to put behind the wood stove here, I noticed that it was a lot lighter and easier to cut. And you know how it is, a lot of the newer products aren't as good as the older products, and it's like that with pressure treated. So I don't know what difference they made in the product. Is it cheaper? Is it not as good as the older stuff? I don't know. But if you're using cement board now, I think I would take their advice and put a sealer on both sides of it before I installed it. So people were asking if I could drop a link to my favorite foam. Well, my favorite foam is stuff that I can salvage, stuff I don't have to pay for, and I don't have a link to that. But in short, my favorite foam is the old-fashioned white styrofoam, you know, the little white beads, the same stuff that the cheap styrofoam coolers are made from. If you press against it with your fingers, it'll leave an indentation, and then it springs back up when you release. That is exactly what I'm looking for. I did say in the video that I don't like to use a rigid type foam. I probably should have worded that differently. Because this stuff here, this Owens Corning, this is considered a rigid foam, but it's also fairly soft where I can make an indentation with my fingers. The only thing is this doesn't spring back quite as quickly as the white foam, but this will work just fine. That would work beneath the bottom plate if you can't get your hands on the white stuff. On most cases, 4" by 4", 4" by 6". This building here has 6" by 6" styrofoam blocks beneath the bottom plate. When I built my greenhouse, I built in the same procedure that I did with this garage. My concrete piers came above the surface of the ground, and I built on top of them in standard procedure. Then I filled the void beneath the plate with styrofoam and applied skirting to both the inside and outside and packed crushed gravel against it. I highly recommend packing crushed gravel and not ordinary topsoil against the exterior of your skirting. This gravel sets up hard like concrete, and I've never had any animals attempt to tunnel through it. Sand or ordinary topsoil may offer different results. Well, alrighty folks, I hope this answers all the questions that you had. If you haven't seen the video on skirting a cabin because you found this one first, I'll put a link in the description below for you. If you find this information beneficial, please click the like button. Seeing those thumbs up gives me encouragement to make more videos just like this one. So that's it for now, folks, and all the best with your building project.
Frankie and the boss out walking in the woods, living life happy and free. Tracks in the snow everywhere they go, there's a pokey way up in that tree. A beaver built a pond where they have some fun, taking life a day at a time. Best friends until the end, Frankie and the boss, Frankie and the boss, Frankie and the boss.